I'm Tony Black from USA Wrestling, Director of State Services. I will not be in Iowa City, but I guess from the comforts of my living room, trying to run the webinar here or the press conference. Pete just asked Bruce Baumgarten. I know many people were looking forward to speaking with Bruce here today. About an hour ago, Bruce found out that one of his closest personal friends passed away, and he will not be on the call as a result of that. So again, from USA Wrestling's office, I'm on the call. Pete Isaias is our National Events Director. Cody Bickley is our Manager of High Performance, and Mike Willis is one of our communication staff. So if questions do arise, there's a really good chance that one of us will be able to answer it for you. But I'd like to turn it over to Josh Schomburger with the University of Iowa, and we can kick off the presser here.
You bet. Well, I'm actually not with the University of Iowa, but I'm with the cities of Iowa City, Corvo, and North Liberty. That's all right. We've been synonymous in a lot of wrestling events that we've been fortunate to partner with USA Wrestling to bring to town over the 20 years that I've been here doing this job and leading the CVB for this particular community. So really just excited, and we put this on the calendar many, many months ago with the hope that we could move forward with a path that it could happen. And it's been a heck of a lot of work and a lot of communication between Pete's team, USA Wrestling, and all of our local health officials at Johnson County Public Health and the hospitals and clinics. And we're excited about this weekend, and really excited to bring USA Wrestling back to town. So really appreciate being here and happy to answer any questions as we go forward.
Thanks, Josh, and I apologize for the getting that
That's all right.
Wrong from the get-go. So the attendees that are on the call with the webinar, if you have a question, what you would do is you can raise your hand. Right now we can't hear you. Mike Finn, I see you've raised your hand, so I'm going to quickly allow Mike to ask his question. So Mike, it looks like you're muted on your computer. So if you unmute, you'll be able to ask the question.
Okay, I think you guys can hear me now. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I guess this is for Pete and for Josh. Obviously, you've got a big thing going on here. The wrestling events that have been held so far have been pretty much smaller, group. One was like a duel type of thing. This is a tournament. What have you been able to study to be able to make the adjustments to how this can work regarding the health status?
Yeah, so thanks for your question, Mike. I'll take that. So realistically, when this thing started about a month into it, USA Wrestling put together several committees. We have a COVID task force along with a return to events committee that we put together. And the committees that were involved, we came up with the return to MAC guidelines, which USA Wrestling is using that to basically have our events. And again, we consulted with all our local health authorities and state governments to do this. We've had 2 successful events that have directly been with USA Wrestling and kind of our oversight. And those happened in Utah earlier this summer in July. Out of those 2 events, we did a survey at 7 days post-event and 14-day post-event. And all those things had very positive reviews in terms of our return to health protocols, the cleanliness of how we're running events. And fortunately for us, there was not any COVID that happened at any of those events. So the largest event that we had almost had 700 kids. This event has about 350 athletes. And we actually feel with the layout that I think anybody that's able to attend is going to find out that this is just a great venue, the way that it lays out and allows us for the social distancing for athletes. They're totally separated from the spectators. So the athlete is going to be very separated, very social distance. And I think our protocols are really going to play well into this whole scenario. And with 350 athletes, I think that we can really do some things scheduling wise, which we did. We modified the schedule somewhat. Greco-Roman is going to compete in a 1-day format now. So they will be in the venue the only time basically today for workouts, and then tomorrow competition. Our men's freestyle and some of the other women will be over at the Marriott tomorrow for working out, things like that, and then in the competition on Saturday, Sunday. So we're trying to keep all those groups separated as much as possible. So I really think that we've thought long and hard, and we've put some good things. In addition, our athlete interviews will be done via Zoom. So I think overall, we hope to have a good plan. The health screenings of the athletes, different foggers and things that you'll see in, and of course, all the PPEs involved.
And I guess I was hoping Josh could comment from a local perspective, because obviously the state of Iowa had like 1,500 positive tests, I think today, and 45 in Johnson County. So obviously from a local standpoint, obviously that's a big concern. You deal with it right now. So your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. We spend, as I mentioned earlier, quite a bit of time with Dave Koch over at the Director of Johnson County Public Health, and had a number of conversations over the past several months between his office and University of Iowa hospitals and clinics. We got a lot of team doctors on the phone from USA Wrestling to just understand the best structure to put in place for fans and athletes. As it relates to the venue itself, we are only going to end up with a capacity of about 25% of the total venue. We have pretty strong, dedicated areas at which the public can move and that are completely separated from entrance and egress of athletes. When the athletes are in the building, there's really only one way they can go to enter the competition area and exit. They'll be the only ones allowed in the field house and on the floor. The spectators will have their own entrance egress, and we've gone and basically it's a GA seating arrangement, but we've worked with the team at Spectra, who is our operator of this particular venue. They run 150 or 60 arenas in the country, including Wells Fargo over in Des Moines. And they have their own strong plan in place. We have mandatory masks mandate. And in the actual arena itself, we've taped off 75% of the seats. So it's set up when you walk in as 2s, 4s, and 6s, and you'll have to sit in those particular groups. And so again, we've done everything we can to communicate with the local public health and have shared their return to wrestling plan that Pete and USA Wrestling have put out. And they're open and available for interviews or conversations as far as where things are at. They feel very, very comfortable with the plan that we have in place for this event.
Could I ask one more question, Tony?
Of course.
Okay, or I'm not sure if Cody would answer this, but simply just the health of the wrestler. Because a lot of people try to say, how does wrestling do it? Probably the most contact sport of any sport. So how does wrestling do it? How do I tell a non-wrestling person how it works?
Yeah, Mike, I'll start there, and then Pete can jump in. But first off, let me just state that I feel, obviously I'm biased, but we have two of the best in the business if we're going to be rolling something out of the gate here with Pete Isaias, our director of events. And I've fortunately worked with Josh on some events that they've held there in the city. And if there's two guys that are checking the boxes and making sure that everything that needs to get done, it's Pete Isaias and Josh Schamberger. So let me just start there. A lot of credit goes to those guys and the time and effort that they put in. With regards to wrestling, it's no different. There's guidelines in place, and for sure, I've dealt with some of those calls in the last couple of weeks. Coaches that have some concerns, not quite sure if they want to attend, and ultimately, obviously, that's on the coaches and the athletes if they feel it's safe. Definitely based off what we're providing and the guidelines that we're going to follow from the time that you walk into the facility. We feel confident that we're doing the best job that we can. And as Pete said, there's been a couple events and we'll learn along the way, but I don't really, the best thing that you can do is follow what the guidelines that are in place, stay strict to them, and, ultimately let people make a decision on what their comfort level is to attend this event. And so, I really couldn't go beyond that other than we're definitely trying to provide an opportunity for athletes. It's been a long time coming, and I know several are anxious to get there to the city this weekend, and we feel confident that it'll be a positive experience, and especially with the follow-up that Pete and his teams are doing. Feel that the protocols and things are in place, and it's a start.
Well, you talked about the protocols, Burp. Protocols set up that there are positives that something could happen to shut this whole thing down. Is that a fear?
Well, I think it's always a fear in this environment. I'll let Pete go, and we don't want anything like that. But I think a lot of people know, a little bit of our sport, and we're going to be safe. We want to be safe and do the right things. But I think people are also looking for an opportunity. And I don't, Pete said we got about 350, so it's not real big per se, and it's a great venue. I've seen the layout and looked at it, but I don't know that you can ever completely get away from that, Mike. I think people got to make decisions on what they feel is best for them and their athletes.
Thank you.
Awesome. Mike, I'm going to disable your chat for a minute. And then next, looks like Jerry has a question. So let me allow to talk. All right. So Jerry, if you take there you go. We can hear you.
Okay. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us, gentlemen. Can you talk about some of the specifics about some of the ways that your venue and your event will keep athletes safe, and some of the things that the spectators will also have to do to safely attend your event?
Yeah, so basically with us, it starts before they even get here. We've communicated with our athletes. We've told them that they will have symptom checker we're partnered with the company Mita that is going to provide a symptom tracking app. We've bought temperature scanners that basically every athlete, staff member, volunteer, official, before they even enter the building, they will have to take their temperature and show us the symptom tracker app. And then as the athlete enters the actual building, they come down the stairs into this Green State Family Field House, which is beautiful area. We've got 6 mats laid out. It's 4 full basketball courts. So plenty of social distancing in the warm-up area for the athletes. Then when the athlete comes in the hole, they will go down a hallway to another holding area, which they can social distance. And basically there's one entrance onto the floor. When a match is done, they enter on the floor, them and only one coach. We're only allowing one coach per corner. Everybody, of course, must be wearing face masks. And as soon as that athlete is done with the match, they exit the floor back into the field house. So the athletes are totally in their own enclosed area throughout the event. They can choose to go up to the spectators if they want. And according to the Johnson County Health Department, we did not need to screen spectators, so our spectators are not screening, but there's plenty of signage in terms of if someone is exhibiting any symptoms that they shouldn't attend the event. If somebody does have a high temperature on the athlete, staff, official side outside, they are immediately quarantined. And we've got a chief medical officer out there that will get them the appropriate care that they need. So we are hoping that we're mitigating the virus enough that it won't even enter the facility through the temperature checks. Of course, nothing is foolproof, but again, we feel comfortable in our plan to mitigate the virus as much as we can.
So the athletes have to be wearing masks at all times except when they're competing during their event?
That's correct, yes. We have USA Wrestling for all our events that we are sanctioning. It has a mask mandate except for actively competing. Coaches have to wear masks or a face shield when they're coaching, and even in the back of house area.
Is there anything else to protect the athletes?
Again, I think just the face mask, shields, things like that. We do have a fogger machine that basically, as they exit the floor, they will be fogged with disinfectant. So, and cleaning protocols for the mats every couple hours. Again, I think that if in our return to events guidelines, our officials are staying 6 feet away. They're not touching the athletes like they used to. They're motioning to the winner as opposed to raising those athletes' hands. So we've tried to, think of enough areas where it could be transferred and try to mitigate that whole situation as much as possible.
Yeah, the officials are wearing masks when they're officiating as well?
Yes, face shields and a mask.
And are these some of the protocols that you used in your tournament in Utah with 700 competitors?
Correct. Yes, these were the same protocols, like I said, that were tested at that event, and it actually, a lot of comments on the cleanliness. Spectators love it, of course, because the floor is clear and you can see wrestling. So just a lot of positive comments on those 2 events we held.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right, so next up, BA, I'm gonna allow you to speak here. Hold on, here we go. So BA, we can hear you now.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Pete, you mentioned the officials a couple of times. You know, many of us fit into a couple of those high-risk areas, or whatever you would call it. Age being a factor, of course. There are some of us that are not as, we're not making weight anymore. What other protocols are in place for the referees? And what about the whistles? I understand we can't use a whistle anymore.
Yeah, so realistically on the whistle side, we first and foremost, it's mandatory to have the face shield. We do recommend that they have a face mask in addition to the face shield. A lot of what we found out is that the electronic whistles are okay, but kind of like the NFL, they're not foolproof. So I think a lot more of our officials will probably be comfortable having the whistle within the mask, covered by the mask and operating that way. Our officials in our meeting that we will discuss tomorrow or this evening, it's basically, you know, we don't want you going out. We want you to stay to your room and obviously try to social distance as much as you can throughout the event and in evenings, things like that. So we've again educated our officials on what they need to do in order to combat that virus. And I think for the most part, we did send a survey out very early on in the COVID, probably 2 months in, to our officials association, ask them then their comfort level of attending events. And about 80% of them said they were comfortable coming to an event and attending an event if we followed some protocols. The events for this event have been hand-picked, selected, and a lot of them are probably in that younger age demographic that aren't compromised attending an event like this.
What about gloves? Boxers and in the MMA, the referees wear latex or rubber gloves, something like that.
Yes, so they will either wear gloves or they will hand sanitize their hands after each match.
Okay, well, thanks. And thanks for putting this on, fellas, and good luck for a great event. We need it.
Thank you.
Thanks, BA. Are there any other attendees who have questions that they want to, you can either submit them through the chat or you'd be able to ask, raise your hand and I'll, Mike Finn, hold on one sec. And Jerry. All right, so the order, we'll go to Mike Finn and then we'll go back to Jerry. So hold on one sec. So Mike, you're up.
I'm unmuted. Oh, and Pete, one thing, obviously this will be many people the first. I know you did one in Utah, but there are other wrestling events that'll be coming up, the trials in the spring, perhaps the NCAAs. Are other governing bodies in wrestling following this to determine how this goes to what they may or may not do?
Oh, there's no doubt. I think that right now we're at the tip of the spear and trying to have an age level competition, senior level athletes or college age kids. So definitely, I think they will be following along, and that's why we want to be a leader in having events. We want to make sure that we're doing it right, and I think that, like I said, I'm comfortable with the protocols. I think our athletes are very excited to compete. I think overall in general wrestling, a lot of the wrestlers want to get back at it, and I'm hoping that we do have great success here, and that leads to parlaying hopefully the NCAAs and our Olympic trials. But God willing that this virus will be hopefully done by then. But if we have to continue having events in this environment, I think that we can do it in a safe fashion.
Thanks, Tony.
Jerry?
Yes, Pete. How do the athletes, well, you talked a little about the warm up, they go in a room. Is there any other place that the athletes can warm up, or are they responsible to do that on their own in their hotel or come to the arena ready to go?
No, again, we have 6 full mats in here. So realistically with the 120 athletes, you've got 20 athletes that could be on the mat at one time, but for the most part, the chairs, they'll socialize, or they'll have their own camps spread out throughout the 4 gyms that we have in here, and they're allowed to warm up on those mats. And that's why we were fortunate enough, we're nearby. The Marriott Hotel has a nice conference center blocks away. And that's why we did rent that for the freestyle for a Friday workout roll around. Again, we want to keep those two, at least those styles segmented from each other.
It almost sounds like you're setting up as best you can individual bubbles for the respective competitions, your officials, and also your spectators as well.
Yes, like I said, I think, this arena is just phenomenal in terms of the way that it lays out in this workout area. And Josh Schomburger and the city of Iowa City and Coralville have really put a lot of thought in this in the hopes of hosting future wrestling events. So it's really a great situation here.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we've hosted a lot of events from World Cup to Olympic trials to a lot of things. And, it doesn't hurt that my day job is to run the Convention Visitors Bureau, and I've been working on building this arena for about 15 years now. And it doesn't hurt that I'm such a big wrestling fan, because in every aspect of this building, the city and everybody kind of gets tired of me talking about wrestling and how this needs to be this way. We need call to mat video fiber from this room to this room, because every time we want to own wrestling. And so we have really laid it out for the purpose of catering to the athlete and fan, and the way it's structured with this adjacent 50,000 square foot field house that's 50 feet by tunnel access to the main floor works very, very well for social distancing and a small wrestling event of 350 athletes.
Josh, how many fans will be allowed into the building? I know you talked about 25%, but how many people is that actually?
It'll be somewhere between 16 and 1,800 when it's all said and done, will be the total capacity that we're going to allow in. It does have 12 suites. The suites are already all pre-sold to groups. Those are individual small groups. There can be a total of 10 to 12 people in those suites. Outside of that, it's all GA in the bowl. The bowl seats about 5,800. Just the bowl itself.
How are your ticket sales going? Are they
we
close
will
to any sellouts?
Yeah, we'll be sold out at our cap. If we aren't already, we'll be sold out by tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
Well, Rachel Bachman, I'm going to allow you to speak, and then you can ask your question.
Okay, great, thank you. I'm curious what the role of COVID testing and quarantining will be in the event. In other words, do athletes have to quarantine before competing, and will anybody be tested? And if so, who and what type of testing?
Yeah, so Rachel, thanks for your question. All along, when we put our return to event guidelines together, we felt it was crucial to work hand in hand with those local and state authorities that were going to be making these decisions. And we submit an operational plan prior to each event. In our operational plan, after having a conference call with the health authorities from Johnson County, we talked a little bit about testing athletes 72 hours prior to arriving in Johnson County. In the end, when we submitted our operational plan, we did not submit it with testing at this time. So we're going to basically do the best we can in screening and temperature checking athletes and those coaches and everybody involved coming in that separate entrance. There is a separate exit also, but at this time, we will not be testing unless someone probably does have a symptom or a temperature check, and they will once again outside be quarantined and sent to the appropriate health authorities. This Minta app that I'm talking about does have a dashboard basically that will it will give us symptoms of people. It will tell us if patient A is having a symptom, things like that, and it will allow for follow-up contact tracing 7 days, 14 days after the event. So again, I think if we were to have something negative happen, we do have things in place with the contact tracing.
Okay, and I'm assuming no quarantining for athletes then?
No, again, I think that is state by state in terms of people coming. We actually had an official from Pennsylvania that had to cancel at the last second due to the fact that Iowa was added to the Pennsylvania quarantine list, and obviously his livelihood of teaching wouldn't allow him to to come to an event and go back to Pennsylvania and quarantine for 14 days. So again, that's why we're relying on local and state authorities. Fortunately, Iowa is allowing us to have this event without any quarantining.
Okay, thank you.
Are
Thanks.
any of the other attendees of the press conference have questions? If so, just be sure to raise your hand and I'll be quickly take you off mute and you can ask the question. So a little bit of, I'll do, I sound like an auctioneer, but any last call before we close up shop with the press conference? Rachel Bachman again, hold on one sec. Rachel?
Yeah, so I just have a quick one. You said 350 wrestlers are, you expect 350 for this event. How many were at last year's Senior Nationals?
So actually, our men's freestyle is up. It went up from 150 to 200. So I do think we have some, probably a little bit more college age athletes in the field. Our Greco-Roman was at 120 last year. It's at 100 this year. And then our women's freestyle is the one that's down a little bit. That was about 150 last year, and there's only 50 participants. So overall, two of our divisions are right where they need to be or up, and the women are down a little bit. And
Okay,
again, I
thank you.
think that's probably more the women's side. It's a lot of those college institutions, I think, are still trying to figure out what's going on, and they might decide to wait. We are hosting another event in Omaha, Nebraska later on in November. And I think a lot of those college women's programs are going to go to that one instead.
Got it. Okay.
Josh and Pete and Cody and Mike and Nick, all the panelists. I don't see any more questions coming in. So thanks to all of you for joining, and thanks to our attendees across the country that joined as well. I would say that the technology that we're using to do this will make, in the future, right, you're learning how we're going to be doing, how we're going to be operating going forward. And it'll also be good because we'll have a whole bunch more people able to plug in wherever they are if they're not able to attend like they used to. So again, thanks to the panelists, thanks to the attendees. With no other questions, we'll all sign off.